In the last video, we alluded to something called dis savings. And here we're actually going to start talking about the difference between dis savings and savings and what it takes to basically break even and transfer over from dis savings to savings. So dis savings is when consumption is greater than disposable personal income. It's when you basically spend more than what you make. It happens. Look at the United States government. Happens all the time. They spend more than they make, and that's why we're in the budget deficit. But it happens in economies and in households as well. So remember, as we're going through all this, we're usually talking about a whole economy, not necessarily just an individual household, but it's whenever we're doing the planned consumption function, whenever we're doing the planned savings function and doing these calculations, it's on a whole economy, not just for an individual household. If it was for an individual household, it changes things. But remember, this is for a whole economy, but I might use examples dealing with individual households for better clarification. So, dis savings is when consumption is greater than disposable personal income. So remember, you find savings by disposable personal income minus consumption. When disposable personal income is greater than consumption, savings occur. Oh, lo and behold, you're making more than what you spend. You have savings. When disposable personal income is less than consumption, dis savings occurs. So in the last video, we talked a little bit about how that autonomous consumption, that consumption that's going to take place regardless of how much you are making, will affect the actual amount of, or will lead into this dis savings aspect. So whenever you have dis savings occurs when income is less than consumption. So now we want to, and here is a quick little example of it. We might have a disposable personal income of $3,000, where our consumption is $3,600. That means we have $600 in dis savings. Basically, income minus the amount we're spending on consumption, and if the income is less than the consumption, we have dis savings. So, what does it take to get over that hurdle? What does it take to get to the point where now you're dealing with savings, not just dis savings? Well, you have to get over that autonomous consumption hurdle. You have to kind of make up for that. So what is the level of income needed to eliminate this dis savings? So now we're trying to determine the break-even level of income. What do we need in order to no longer have dis savings and potentially start going into that savings aspect? Very simply is where disposable personal income equals consumption. So let's go ahead and see if we can start find the break-even. Well, how do we go about finding the break-even? Well, first and foremost, we need to use this formula of consumption equals autonomous consumption plus marginal propensity to consume times the disposable personal income. That was a bad arrow, sorry about that. That right there is the same formula that we're going to use where we're trying to find consumption. And if you remember, our example for this chapter is that we have an autonomous consumption of 1,500 and a disposable and a marginal propensity to consume is of a 0.7. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to plug in different levels of disposable personal income to create a list of consumption levels. That's what we're doing right here in this table. We have a list of disposable incomes, and we're calculating this consumption level. So we say that at 3,000, we plug 3,000 right here into this disposable personal income, and we find that 3,000 times 0.7, it gives us some number plus 1,500, that gives us 3,600. We plug this 4,000 into this same equation, we find that consumption is at 4,300. And whenever we have a consumption of, or a disposable income of 5,000, we plug that into there, we find that we have consumption of $5,000. Now I'd encourage you to go through and making right now that whenever you plug in all of this into that disposable personal income, we get this corresponding savings. So once you have that table of disposable income and savings, now you can plug it into this formula. So now we're going to plug it back into the savings formula. We're going to say disposable income minus consumption will give us our savings. So we can do that for each one, and we see here we have a dis savings of 600, 300, and then lo and behold, we finally have an area where it's equal to 0. So where you find where disposable income equals consumption, you see these two equal each other, so that makes a savings of 0. So here we neither have savings nor dis savings. This is that break-even level. So whenever we're trying to find that break-even level of disposable personal income, well, we could find it where there's a savings of 0. So what that basically means is that that break-even level of income is $5,000. If you're making $5,000, you're spending $5,000. But lo and behold, if you make over $5,000, let's say $6,000, oh, you're only spending $5,700. You now have savings. Same thing for $7,000. Consumption of $6,400. You have a savings of $600. So real quick, that's the mathematical way to find that. Now you can also do this graphically. So if you were trying to do it graphically, you could draw a 45-degree ray from the origin. So here we have our little table of break-evens of savings and dis-savings. We have our consumption expenditures over here, our disposable personal income down here, just like we had before. And this nice pretty blue line, that's our example that we've been running with throughout this whole chapter. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a red line. This red line is at a 45-degree angle from the origin. Now it may not quite look like 45 degrees, but I guarantee it is, just because of the way this graph is set up. But you can see that disposable income equals consumption here. Disposable income equals consumption there. So whenever we're saying that we're drawing a 45-degree ray from the origin, what we're really saying is we're making x equal y. Or in other terms, we're making it where disposable personal income equals consumption. And lo and behold, where disposable personal income equals consumption, that's that break-even level of income. So what we're going to do is we're going to find where these two lines intersect, and that gives us our break-even disposable income. Because at any given point in time, we're saying that this line right here is always equal to where consumption equals disposable personal income. So any time that you have an intersection of that line, you know break-even, or that you're at that break-even level of income, because that's where disposable personal income equals that consumption level. We see that that occurs right there at that 5,000 mark, which is the exact same number that we got at our break-even right here. So if you run into an issue where you have the formula, but you can't quite figure out how to actually do this table, maybe it's not giving you quite enough information to complete this table, just remember that if you have this formula, just graph it. You just graph it and you run that 45-degree line from the origin, find where those two intersect, and that's where your level of break-even income is going to be. That's where you're going to find where those two lines intersect. If you have a ray coming out at a 45-degree angle from the origin, where those two lines intersect, that is where your break-even level of income is going to be.